Right. Huh. How do I link up with him?
Red wires down here now.
Oh, hang on. How do I link up with them? Marriott. Right.
Here.
How's it going?
And oh, actually, I'm gonna have to unplug my mic. Go on, go for it again.
Nice. How's it going?
Excellent, mate. Two bald guys on the screen. That's just what everybody wants to see.
Did you notice that when I duetted your video the other day, I put a hood on because I thought you can't have just two bald guys in the same screen, so there's got to be some difference there. So I put a little hood on.
Have you noticed as well? A lot of us that do these sort of videos, we're all bald. What's that about?
Because the
Is it too
knowledge
much
just
heat
seeps
coming
out.
out?
Yeah, the knowledge, the wisdom just seeps out, man, and all the hair just falls out. That's what it is.
It's the foil hats, isn't it? Yeah, you can't get the
Yeah,
you can't
yeah.
release the heat and all the follicles die.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, man, I got want to
Ood,
pick up on something.
you have a lively day tomorrow. So what's going on?
Yeah, it should be fun, man. Apparently, starting off about 1 p.m. The general kind of idea is to mill around the general area around Hyde Park, but not literally go to Hyde Park until bang on pretty much 1 p.m. And last month, this worked superbly well. We got there a bit too early, about 12 o'clock. There wasn't many people there. Got a bit of a story to tell about that later on as well, but some of you might already know. Yeah, and so it was kind of sparse about 12 noon, and we kind of thought, oh, it's going to be a bust. No one's going to come. That's it. There's not enough promotion. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, literally within the space of about 20 minutes, it exploded, and you had thousands and thousands of people congregating on the road that goes past Hyde Park, and then they began the march, and it was massive. It was just out of nowhere. So this is a good strategy: is to stay in smaller groups to begin with, mill around the general area, Chinatown, a bit further. I don't know London very well, but that general area, and then pretty much, trying around at the same time. 1 p.m. is the time that's been on the flyers, on the posters, then all descend on that one area, and it gives the police less time to break it all up and stuff. And because we had such sheer numbers last time, they weren't able to affect the march at all. It was completely successful, peaceful, no bother at all. Lots of joy, lots of happiness, and that's one of the main reasons I go to these things, man. I was watching you earlier saying why you don't go to these things, and that's fully legitimate position to have, absolutely. I kind of feel like, yeah, I'm probably already on a list somewhere, so fuck it, I'll go. And
You've been bagged and tagged. I've seen the video.
well, this is what happened. So I'll tell some of the guys that are in here now, if you didn't already know. Last month, I actually got arrested and issued with a fine for breaching coronavirus regulations, and it was absolutely ridiculous situation. Like I said, that we got there quite early before it all kicked off. I and about 20 other people were filming Piers Corbyn do a speech on Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, and for some reason the police picked me out and said that I had to disperse under corona regulations. I asked them to explain what the rules were specifically, and they said you can't be in a group of over two people. So I said at that point, I'm not in a group of, I'm not associated to anybody else here. I don't know the names. I'm by myself. So am I really in a group of over two people? I don't know if that's the stipulation, but I tried to have that conversation with them about that. Like, I'm not actually with any of these people. Anyway, then I had a conversation for about 5 minutes with these police about the whole situation, how ridiculous it is. I've got that on film, have not uploaded it yet, but then I went back to filming Piers Corbyn after they spoke to me for a little bit, or rather listened to me speak. They didn't really have much to say in response to the observations that I was making, because that's another story. But anyway, then I went back to filming Piers Corbyn. A few minutes later, two different police came up and again singled me out and said, "You have to disperse under corona regulations." And I asked these two new police to explain the rules, and they refused to do it, which is a bit weird. They refused to actually explain what the rules that they were asking me to follow were. And then they kind of ushered me away from this area where about 20 people were filming Piers Corbyn. And then they asked me for my details. And I said, "I don't think I have to give you my details at this point, do I? I'm asking about my rights." And they refused to answer the question about my rights. So they refused to explain what the actual regulations were. They refused to say whether I was obliged to give my details. And they took that to be me refusing. Okay, so then they started putting me in handcuffs. And this is the notorious footage that was used on Sky News, Daily Express, God knows where else. It was a bit annoying actually, because the actual clip that they used was just me fumbling around trying to get my phone in my pocket because the police were trying to steal my phone out of my hands behind my back. So the only footage of this arrest on the mainstream media was me going, "That's mine, oi, that's mine." But before then,
but they'll always paint you away, won't they? They won't actually show what your message was or why you're actually being arrested. They just create this whole other sort of aura of speculation. They just leave it open for your interpretation based on this little snippet. And that's what news is, that's what these talk shows are. They want this little snippet or what do you call it? They get like a 10-second segment. And then that's projected out and everybody just jumps on that like that's fact. But they haven't looked any further.
It was a photo opportunity because what happened was, this is the bizarre thing about it, right? So there was two professional looking cameras filming my entire conversation with the police before I had handcuffs on, right? So they'd moved me away from this group and singled me out. And whilst this conversation was happening, singled away from the area where Piers Corbyn was, there was two cameras filming it already. Okay, so I believe this was a photo opportunity, and they used it, of course, to give a false impression of the day's events, to give the impression, to put people off attending these kind of things. If you see footage of someone getting arrested, it might make you pause for, it might make you think, "Oh, I'm not going to go to one of those, I might get in trouble," kind of thing. So they used footage of me being arrested, and then later on, after the march, which was completely peaceful, you had 100,000 people, completely peaceful. No bother whatsoever. Smiles, hugs, friendly music. It was amazing. Anyway, but the footage they used on the media was me getting arrested, and then later on, after it had all happened, after it had all been finished, about 500 odd people, maybe up to 1,000, were stayed back on Hyde Park, and the police. And I've got footage of this as well, which I'll have to re-upload now that I lost my main channel. The police lined up and charged at this group of people just peacefully stood on Hyde Park, trying to elicit a response. And the most they got in response was basically a few drinks thrown in their direction, but no violence really. And so that didn't work. So then after this,
think of it this way, right? Because when you're out in public like that, you're not meant to intimidate people because you'd be arrested for it. Yet I've seen the lines that they form, and then they get the orders from what they see as like their general behind them, tell them to sort of launch forward, and they're hoping people scramble into a bit of panic, and then they'll pick them off like that, and it looks like chaos, and it looks like the public are the one that causing it, but they're not.
That's right. And this situation at Hyde Park after the march, there was two helicopters circling around, getting good footage of this. Oh, that was a photo opportunity as well. Make no mistake about it. And they were lining up, about 100 police at least, lining up and then charging into this group of people that were just stood around on Hyde Park doing nothing at all but standing together, being social, right? That didn't get much of a response. They made a few arrests, but then, and I got footage of this as well, behind that line of police was another group of police with riot shields and batons. You'd think they were breaking up some kind of like violent riot. It was insane. Such an overreaction. And it would look like a training exercise. It looked like they were using that situation to train for situations.
They're waiting for it really to kick off one day, and this is their training for it. This is real life training.
Yeah, absolutely. But they needed to try and elicit a violent response out of people because they weren't getting it, because that entire day was peaceful. And that is what I think is so important about those marches, that they do remain peaceful, because it sullies the message if there's any trouble. And amongst 100,000 people, it's quite amazing actually that amongst that many people that turned up, there was no bother nothing no headlines about violence or fights or burning things or whatever, And obviously, the thing in Bristol, that seemed like a bit of a setup with the van with the dodgy twice
Yeah,
used
it's a bit.
number plate and all the rest of it.
There's a lot of um, there's a lot of trickery going on. I think on both sides, because I did go through a phase quite early on where I thought you could see such, you could see the narrative was so one way, and there was no nuances in there. There was no middle ground. It was all so one way. I thought the only way to really combat it is you have to go completely the other way, and only portray the things that you want people to see. But that's not where I normally come from, because I sit in the middle and I will hear both sides, and I'm happy to pick out little bits from both sides. Because actually, people like to say, the whole narrative is wrong, and I don't necessarily believe that. Where they say, they're only doing this for this reason, they might be, but it doesn't mean some of the things that they do don't make sense. Do you know? If it was a
Yeah,
real thing going on, if things were out of control, whatever, some things do make sense. Like where they say we should be closing down the border, and everyone reacted, "Ah, that's racist. You can't do that." If there was a worldwide pandemic, you would close down the border. You know, things like that. But then you do have to still look deeper into it to see, are they doing it for the right reasons, or is it nefarious? And that's where
absolutely.
sitting in the
Yeah,
middle is. You have to hear both sides, and then we all have to make a rational judgment on it. But where we all jump, like sort of on our own pre pre-planned prejudices, essentially, we're either jumping on this side or this side, but we shouldn't be. We should all be sat in the middle going, what the hell is going on both sides here? And what way are we going to go, or what can we take from both, and then all move forward together? But we're all
yeah.
divided.
It's very easy to come at it full throttle from the point of view of if you're somebody who has spent the last 20 years or so completely distrusting authority because you've seen what happens and you've seen the illustrious history of ways that authority and powers have misused their power. So you've got you've got a history that goes back hundreds of years, thousands of years, if you want to go that far. But you could stay within the last few decades. You've got this history being developed of corruption within power structures. So if you've got that perspective already, then it's quite easy to just jump straight in and go like, this is all fucking complete construction. But you don't need to go that far. You can bring attention to things that are clearly illogical. Like you said, things that just don't make sense. For example, the Corona Act, removing checks on dead bodies. It's one specific thing that gets lost in amongst all of the information that we've been bombarded with over the last year. But it's key
They
points
didn't
like
do
this.
that during the Spanish flu. They didn't do that. They were, don't get me wrong, back then, if you think about it, the lack of science and medicine and stuff that we have now that they didn't have then, they didn't panic to the extent of we cannot salvage anything from this to learn from it. We need to just burn it or bury it or whatever. No, they acted rationally and logically, and they salvaged things that would actually help them go forward and learn. And that's how they're able to do papers now. Even people like Fauci, who did the papers along with other virologists, and they all came to the same conclusion. It was secondary infection, pneumonia.
Probably from the masks.
Yeah, because in the second year, because a lot of people know that and some people don't, in the second year of the Spanish flu, more people died there. It came in like a second wave. That's why we keep getting told the second wave, whatnot, which apparently we've already had. But it came in the second year mainly. It killed more people. But what many people don't realize, in the second year, people started covering their faces. They became aware that it was possibly being passed from person to person through, breathing, shouting, spitting, whatever, and they started covering their faces. And when you get a buildup of bacteria in there, you can cause yourself a secondary infection, being pneumonia. You don't even have to have a viral infection in the first place to get it. And also, that actually leads on to the point of ventilators, because when I went to hospital and I did almost have pneumonia, I was on the verge of it because I had a collapse, well, felt like a collapsed lung after I had a viral infection. They didn't put me on a ventilator. They treated me with antibiotics and other things along the lines. I had other problems. It was causing other problems. Um, so they didn't use a ventilator
That's not,
because ventilators can also cause that secondary infection. As much as they can help in certain situations, they do also come with their problems. And one of them is pneumonia.
if you misuse ventilators, it can certainly make certain health conditions worse. There was a really enlightening, you might have seen it, right at the start of this last year, early on, there was a really enlightening series of videos put out by a New York doctor, not just one actually, but talking quite in depth about his concerns over the misuse of ventilators and the misdiagnosis that was occurring. So New York notoriously had a really bad uh, death rate at the start of it, and they were one of the places that was using ventilators a shitload. And you had nurses and doctors coming out saying, I don't think these are being used appropriately for all of these things that we're seeing. So yeah, there's so many different things that are affecting death rates. And for example, the most recent thing now, people will come up, what about India? Explain India. I don't know what's going on in India. Maybe there's loads of different variables. But by the same breath, if you say you can't explain India, well, you can't explain Florida, you can't explain Texas, you can't explain Sweden, you can't explain Belarus, you can't explain Czech Republic, all these other places that have had few or no restrictions for a long time and have not seen another rise. Then those balance out the places where you say, "Oh, what about India?" I don't know. There's lots of things we need to look into. So knee-jerk reactions to are not
With
helpful.
places like Florida as well, and people say, "Oh, how can you compare us to Florida, whatever?" Well, the fact is, when they opened up, they were having a lot warmer weather, and what are we having now? The weather is getting warmer. We should absolutely be able to open up now because we know that whatever viral infection it is, it doesn't happen to the extent that we've seen during summer. And
Yeah, and
even if you
remember,
did it as a mental health benefit, get people out there feeling good for a few months, then decide what happens at the end of the year. Don't slowly let them out where at the very sort of height or at the end of summer, they can get full freedom of what they're going to consider full freedom. And then a week later go, no, lockdown again. That's not good for
well,
anyone.
you see, this is the thing, isn't it? Because you don't need to think or talk about conspiracy theories. Just talk about logic and what has happened and what hasn't happened. Crucially, so for example, they never mentioned vitamin D. If they really cared about public health, if they wanted to limit deaths, right at the start of this, they should have said, "Everyone, go out now and get vitamin D." In fact, they'd have given it away for free. They'd have been sending you it in the post, vitamin D supplements,
Yeah.
vitamin C and zinc, and they'd been telling you to exercise and do all these other things. They're now telling you that helps. A recent story, a year after this is kicked off, we've had a recent story saying, "Oh, guess what? Exercise is good for your immune system." Oh, no way! Like, so
They're
so
like,
if they
I don't know if you know this. I heard this murmur, something that vitamins are good for you and healthy eating and going to the gym or going running outdoors, stuff like. Apparently, I don't think we've heard this in the last 100 years at all. But these things are good for you.
so we're expected to believe that the same people that signed off on flammable materials for Grenfell care about public
Oh,
health.
right.
But anyway, you don't even have to go down the rabbit hole of of explaining how little these people care about our health. The inconsistencies and the illogical moves that they've made give us enough reason to ask questions and ask for a reappraisal of things, which thankfully now you're getting requests for a reappraisal from very legitimate, serious bodies like the UK Medical Freedom Alliance. And, doctors, professionals are getting organised. There's court cases being organised.
Yeah.
Doctors, scientists are getting organised. So the momentum is building and it can't be written off so easily as tinfoil hatters anymore. So
Well,
I
the
think, I
ones
think
that call those people conspiracy theorists, they're the ones that are starting to look like the conspiracy theorists. If
absolutely.
in all honesty, I've also got somebody who
Absolutely.
would like to say hi to you as well. Actually,
I never do this.
Hello. Hello.
she wanted you
I
to
love
know
you.
that she is real.
Cheers.
I believe
Nice.
that
How's
she
it going?
direct messages you, but because of what goes on at the minute, we're all a bit guarded as to who we speak to and who we trust as well online. So
Yeah.
we know, and I'll openly say this: we have our own Telegram group among other groups that we join, and we know for 100% fact that there are people in there with multiple user accounts just watching and listening to what we're saying. And this is an
Yeah.
open group, and they're making out like this is some sort of secret society we've got. It's an open group. I am
Yeah.
openly invited everybody in everywhere to join it if you wanted to, just to talk to each other,
Yeah.
reconnect, come to an
Yeah.
understanding, ideas, all this sort of stuff. But they're sitting in the background now and then showing screenshots to us all going, oh, got you on this, got you on that. What are you doing?
Shady, man. It's shady. And listen, the thing is, right, amongst the maelstrom of misinformation out there, amongst the kaleidoscope of spin and different opinions and all the rest of it, all we're trying to do is find some truth and justice and fairness. We're trying to like advocate for fairness. Imagine that. We might get, I've said this before in a video, I might get minutia wrong here and there along the way when I'm trying to piece it all together. But the overall like effort is to try and raise awareness of something that's important, i.e., protecting fucking basic rights that are getting stolen off the back of the situation that's clearly been exaggerated and manipulated for political ends. Like, you know, to say the exaggerations. This is the most open secret that somehow doesn't get enough recognition, but it's there in the small print every single time you see that big scary number on the TV. Right underneath it, it says deaths for any reason within 28 days of a test. This was actually put up to 60 days for some circumstances. If you look on the government website, they actually changed that to within 60 days for certain circumstances. But let's stick with the 28 days. That's enough. Like, yeah, deaths for any reason within 28 days of a positive test. That's counted towards the COVID numbers. They're testing every single hospital admission. Hospitals tend to be filled with people that are dying. That's what they're fucking for half the time. So, like, you go into hospital for any kind of health condition, you test positive with a test that produces a lot of false positives, of course. It's a whole other kind of worms. But so that's one of the main things that we can say for absolute certainty. The perception of this crisis is inflated by the way that they are counting things. That's not controversial. They admit that themselves.
And
And
there is
yet
no
that
denying it in any way.
yeah,
You cannot logically deny that any part of this has been inflated.
that's right. That's
Look,
right. And when you've
I
got
mean, look at the papers that came out. What was it? Is it a week ago that it came out now? It might, but time keeps flying by for me. But recently in the papers, might be in Telegraph or something. Was it 23% were false or something? Of the details they put down as COVID deaths, 23% were not COVID deaths. I think they actually snapshot it for 1 week, but they showed the graph being for the whole year, and then they snapshot this 1 week, which made it look like obviously the whole year 23% was wrong. And
and
that
it's
in
and
itself, actually, yes, that does help towards what we're saying. But even that, I'm questioning it. Like, you're not giving a true representative uh, graph there, because you're saying it's for this 1 week, but you're showing the whole timeline, which will make people think it's the whole timeline. And then you get people, say somebody like me, say I was very much against the narrative, and I was like, oh, look, look, look. And I didn't read it properly. I just read the headline, saw the graph, went, look at it, all of it, only 23%. That's wrong. You have to question both sides. There is
yeah.
no one side to this.
I think it's going to be a lot higher than that 20% as well, because
Oh yeah, absolutely.
especially early on during the peak, the government ordered, like, remember at the peak, the only places that were actually doing tests were the hospitals. And leaving aside the fact that these tests aren't reliable, okay, everywhere else was like care homes, for example, where a massive percentage of the deaths were because of the care home massacre, which is the name that I give to that situation where they sent thousands of infected patients into care homes, emptying out hospitals expecting a deluge that never came. So you sent infected patients into buildings filled with the most vulnerable demographic in society who are always at risk from RTI type deaths, right, and illnesses. So you set off a domino effect amongst the most vulnerable people in care homes, right? And in care homes, they were told by the government to record COVID-19 on death certificates even without a test. Sometimes after a negative test, even if you just had suspicions, if you had symptoms, the kind of symptoms that are always killing people in care homes, from flu, pneumonia, sepsis, norovirus, like all the rest of them. So, they were told to put COVID on death certificates from observed symptoms, not even with a test. And these are typical symptoms that are shared with many other health problems. So, causes of death. So that in itself was a
The
big problem
weirdest
as
thing that
well.
I find now is that everything that I have to put out video wise, if you notice on my videos now, it's not so much as facts. I can't deal with facts apparently. I'm not allowed to put them out. My previous channels was always facts. I always spent hours researching, and now I don't do it. So instead, I have to ask questions. And the reason why I ask the question is because I want people, like the people watching here, the people that see the videos, I want them to go look at it themselves. So I'll give you a little nugget of what I'm asking. And the point is for you to go search it. Because if you go search it, you'll find the information and you go, oh, actually, that wasn't so hard to find. And I've just found this as well. What else is there? And these are all
Yeah,
legal documents and viable information. We're not talking
Yeah.
Dave made a website called dave.org and this is what I think of it. These are from the government websites and everything else. I used to sit there and read hours and hours of this stuff just to do a video. And it is research. And people go, oh, yeah, research, whatever. You use Google. Google is the most powerful search engine on the planet. And if you're not going to use
Google
something like
leads.
that, or you're going to say that's not research.
Yeah. Well, any search engine is not the research in itself. It's just the portal by which you reach things that are legitimate or not legitimate, and it's up to you to discern what is worthy information or not. But the way that you're doing videos now is actually brilliant on at least two levels. One, it keeps you safe from these accusations of false information because you're asking questions. But two, it's a good way of going about it because I think you're more likely to get through to people if you get them to feel like they arrived at the decision or the new position, new information. That's an old edict of discourse. It's much more effective to get people to feel like they arrived at that position rather than you telling them this is the position you need to have. So it's a very, very good, effective way that you're doing videos now, and I hope that protects your channel as well because I found the review process to be quite good. Most of my videos have been restored on appeal, but I don't know. Are you still getting videos flagged with this approach? Do you still have to get videos restored sometimes, or?
I'm not going to delve into that for the simple
All right,
reason I have
no
delved
worries.
into all these rules and everything around how TikTok works, and I've worked certain
No
things
worries.
out, and I'm not going to divulge them to others. I'm
All
happy
right.
to do it privately, obviously, but I'm not
No,
going to
that's
do it
cool. That's
openly
cool.
because I took the time to read it. Yet these people that attack us don't read the rules, and therefore they're being taken off because they make the mistakes they think that we're making. Um,
Right. Good thinking.
Mandy
Yeah. Yeah.
commented Google is bad though. Yes,
Yeah.
there are things like is it DuckDuckGo you can use as an
Oh, yeah.
alternative. Um, but yeah, Google said right. Google, you need to know how to use Google essentially if you're going to use it. So I'm not saying that Google is my source for everything. And like you said, Google is the portal to get you to the source of information. So if you want to read, if somebody said, for example, the masks, okay, and the exemptions and everything else, to find the information, I had to go to the government website because that is where the legislation is. You use Google, type in exemptions, masks, whatever it takes, and it brings up a list of where you can go. Find the government website, go on there, then you read the actual document. That's what we do. We're not going on Google reading the headlines of each individual thing that comes
Yeah.
up because 9 times
Yeah.
out of 10, you'd probably have to go through about 20 pages to get to the real stuff. Unfortunately, it is a truth that Google works in such a way that it depends on what region you're in, what country you're in, what information they want shown, who's paying for a bit of information to come above somebody else's. All these things come into play when you're searching for stuff. So you might not necessarily get the information you want, expect, or need because somebody else is pushing their own agenda before
Yeah.
the real thing that you want to find. So not only do you have to search deeper with the right keywords and know where to find information, you have to also use other search engines because some of them are not working in that way, like DuckDuckGo. I'm sure to some degree they will have something. Nothing is pure these days, but DuckDuckGo apparently is a better form of it.
Yeah.
And
There's less
that's just
tracking on it
letting
apparently.
other people if they want to look as well.
Yeah, I did that recently. I looked up some of the regulations about exemptions in certain business settings when this new easing of restrictions happened last week or whenever it was, because I went to get a new tattoo the other week, and I was in conversation. I'd booked it in December last year before lockdowns started, and so I'd had an email back and forth with the guy who was going to do it for quite a while, discussing the design and stuff and various things. And like 2 days before the appointment finally arrived, like last week, after 3 months of waiting, he says, "Right, when you come, you'll have to bring cash and ID and a mask." And I says, unless I'm exempt, I'm assuming, I'm exempt in other settings. And he said he didn't really know. And I sent him a screenshot of the government website saying this exemption still, and he kind of said, "Well, you might have to wear a visor." And I said, "That's fine. I'll wear," because I thought compromise. All right, I don't want to be a dick about it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like I
But
do. I
on
do.
that point, though, on the government website, it's not being a dick either, though. You could have literally sent him the literature from the government website that says the visors are useless without the mask. So these people walking around
Well,
with a visor and not a mask, that's pointless. Even the government is telling you that's pointless.
mate. The funniest thing, and it's not the first time I've seen it, but today, walking past a barber's, right, in the window, there's a barber stood over a customer, right, mask below his nose, with a shield about here, funneling his entire breath down onto the fucking dude's head. Like, come on now.
Oh,
Nobody actually thinks these things are doing anything for our health. They're just doing it because they're being told to, because it's easier, isn't it? It's easy life.
yeah.
Just because most people don't think that far into it. They haven't got time or inclination to think that far into these things, because they just go to work, earn the money, come back home, spend a few hours to themselves, trying to enjoy themselves, go to bed, get up and do the same again. Most people don't have the time or inclination to delve into this stuff deeper and think about the
Yeah.
ramifications of what's actually going on, really. But
But I
but a
almost
lot of
feel like
people.
the government brought this on themselves in a way because by shutting everything down, they've given us more time than ever to research all this stuff. Because if they
Yep.
hadn't shut things down and I was still at work working the stupid hours I'd always been doing, I
Right.
would never have been looking at this stuff. But here I was sat at home on furlough, and my own business effectively stopped from trading, and I've got all the time in the world to go and research everything.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
And
That
so many
sounds about
people
right.
have
Like.
just woken up to this sort of thing. It's just bizarre. So did you get your
Yeah.
tattoo in the
Yeah.
end?
Yeah. No, I'm trying to find a lighter. Yeah, it's back to front though, so you won't be able to see it properly. It's back to front. You
Oh yeah,
can't read it.
nice bit of
It
clipping.
says joy as an act of resistance, but it's back to front. I can't flip my video, but yeah, it's the title of an album by a band called Idols, but just a good sentiment as well. It essentially means don't let the bastards grind you down.
And that's hard sometimes, you know. Sometimes it does grind you down. Give yourself a
Yeah,
couple of days and you've got to get back at it, I'm afraid. But this
yeah,
is where the difference comes in, where I I would rather people didn't look down their nose at each other for their own beliefs. So, for example, you going out and protesting or marching or whatever anybody wants to call it, I would never look down them, even though I don't necessarily agree with doing that because I don't think it affects change right now. Like it used to, or it used to seem like it would, but right now, they don't care what we think. So I feel like walking down there peacefully, as you guys are, and I've seen the videos, I watch them live, peaceful. But when you're walking peacefully towards a wall of people with batons and shields, dogs, horses, vans, all the rest of it, there's only one thing that's going to happen in the end. And you're all going to come home, well, some of you are going to come home battered, tagged, and now being watched, essentially. And for me,
well,
that's not something I want to do. So instead, I'd rather raise awareness online because I feel like they're attacking a lot of people online with all this messaging, the videos. Look at the propaganda adverts they've had that had to be taken down because they went against the guidelines for proper advertising because they lied. They made up stuff to scare people and they had to remove their adverts. I brought light to these, and even if it convinces one person to just go and research something, they'll then tell other people. That's my goal. So, but some people will sneer at me and say, "Well, you don't go to protest. You're not affecting change." We're all trying to affect change in different ways.
to me, the utility of protests is simply that it keeps a visible presence of opposition to what's going on, and it might empower other people to think, hang on, there's other people that think like me. So to grow that opposition, to grow that awareness, to give people the impetus to speak out, to have the confidence to air their views amongst their circles, maybe, or anywhere else. So it's just one part of it. The protests don't do anything at all by themselves. Completely agree with that. And but it's just what's the alternative? If there was no protests, they'd still be trying to do these things anyway, and it would just
Mm.
seem like there was less opposition to them. So I think they're useful for maintaining. For example, it takes a critical mass of people opposing something to change something. So, for example, in a little microcosm with the football thing recently, they couldn't do it because there was so much opposition to it within that the microcosm of football. I mean, I don't give two fucks about what was going on there, but like,
That drove
you know,
me nuts, that whole thing,
you had enough
because of the
fans.
parallels.
Yeah, you had enough fans, officials, players, people employed within the industry opposing it, enough that they couldn't do it because they couldn't do it without that consent, without that support. And it's similar to this whole situation as well, on a much bigger scale, of course. So I think that the protests help to give people, the empower people to have this courage of their own convictions if they're quietly questioning things themselves but don't really feel able to challenge things. I've seen so many people recently, after a whole year of this, I'm still seeing now recently a lot of people saying, oh, went into a shop without a mask for the first time, it felt amazing. So it's like, so it's important it's useful to keep trying to grow that confidence in people to change their behaviors, to oppose things in their own way, locally, whatever. And like, yeah, if you even now after a year, well, not a year because the mask didn't come in until July 25th, 4 months after the peak started to drop. That's a whole different thing. But people only now starting to get the confidence to take the mask off, and that's a big thing. People say when this all started, and we were complaining about the masks, and people are like, oh, it's just a mask. It's only for 20 minutes when you go in the shop. What's the big deal? Well, it's because it's a fig leaf that is enabling everything else. You have to keep this perception of an ongoing crisis in order to justify everlasting restrictions to rights and freedoms. And if everybody was walking around normal without no masks, it would be a lot harder to sell things like vaccine passports or all the rest of it. It'd be a lot more difficult to maintain the illusion that it was necessary to have all these unprecedented changes to rights and stuff without that perception of an ongoing crisis. And the masks give you that perception. So that's a little tangent, but
But as well, like, people would say that, you know, we're anti-maskers, anti-vax, anti-lockdown, all the rest. They love to do this anti thing. But at the beginning, when this happened, right, I actually I wasn't paying attention at the beginning, like to the news articles where there were murmurings of what's going on in China. But it was actually the other half that was at work, and she saw it on the news there. And she came home and said, I'm concerned about it. We started looking more into it, and we heard who it's affecting, how it's affecting them. And because I technically fell into that category, I decided, right, I'm coming out of work. I came out of work and I stayed home for a while until I knew what was going on. That is technically a rational reaction to something that you don't know what will happen.
I called it before.
You did call it before it was in the UK. So you did that. I was also one of the people that wore masks. Now, after a while, I think it was after a month or two, you know, we had the time to start looking into it, reading more, finding out what's going on. After a while, I was like, this isn't what they're saying it is. There's something not right here. Something's not correlating between what they're saying and doing, and like cause and effect. There was no correlation between cause and effect. And
my missus called it before me as well.
So I took the mask off. I decided I'm not staying indoors. I looked into more things. I found more problems with the story, and I was very frustrated for a long time because I considered myself to be one of the early people to realize what was going on. And I felt very lonely because everybody was caving in, doing all these things, and I felt like I was the only one. And I could see where it was going. You could see the plans ahead, and everybody else was going, no, that's not what's going to happen. And here we are a year later. All these things have come into play that we said are happening. And now people waking up, which is brilliant. But it's taken so long, and for some people, it's so disheartening. But people think I started off as this person that denied everything, and I wasn't. I was very cautious.
Yeah, I was the same, man. People might have seen me say this in a video before, but last March, I was so scared about what was going off that we bought a padlock for the shed because I thought it was going to be mass looting. Like, that's how crazy I thought it was going to get, right? And last April, I told my missus I'd get the vaccine when it came out. So, like you know, that perception of it being this unprecedented wave of risk, and before we even really had time to delve into everything else, last April, I said I was going to get the vaccine. My missus by that time had already started to question things and like be a bit suspicious, but that's where I was. Yeah, last April, that's what I said to my missus, and then then you start reading about it and learning more. But so I wasn't some kind of like, I wasn't instantly questioning everything that we were being told straight away, because it did seem quite unprecedented at the time when you saw those videos from China of people dropping down dead in the street randomly, like body bags lined up, men in hazmat suits coming to bring them, take them away and stuff. It gave the perception of a serious fucking thing about to kick off. And then Italy as well seems serious as well. But like, yeah, that picture that occurred in China of body bags lined up and people dropping down dead in the street never happened anywhere else, which
No.
should give people some pause for thought about what was going on there. But
Yeah, you talk about like the Nightingale Hospital that was set up, didn't get used. Our hospitals, there was no actual. This was one of the things that really sort of annoyed me a little bit. They kept portraying the hospitals as being, overrun and they were on the brink of collapse. We weren't seeing that. And every time they filmed inside the hospital for the news, it was these very clever shots that weren't the whole. I guarantee if you film something, if you really want to prove something, you get the whole perspective. You get the whole room in the shot. You do a full. They could have literally proved us all wrong by doing a one take scene where they walk through the entrance of the hospital, either through the accident emergency, wherever, walk through the whole hospital, go ward to ward, seeing what's going on. And people will go, yeah, but people's privacy and stuff, you don't want to see that. Well, they did show parts of it at the beginning. They were in
instead,
some wards.
instead, we got choreographed dance routines.
Yeah, exactly. They were telling us how busy they are, and yet we got people like doctors and nurses dancing. And people will go, "Oh, they've taken 10 minutes on their break to do it. You're out of order for doing that." That was not a 10-minute dance routine. A lot of these were very well choreographed. They had signs. They did a better shot doing these dance routines where they would go down the corridor as people came out of rooms and this did this. All empty rooms, might I add, as well.
Mate,
They did a better job doing that than actually showing the pandemic. And I was just like, what am I witnessing here? Because this is not right.
mate, you might know already, and some people watching might know already. I work in the NHS. I've worked in the NHS since last May, early May last year, right?
I
On an
didn't know that.
elderly ward. I work in NHS on an elderly ward, right? I'll tell you now, not one single patient has got sick with this since last April. Not one. And we've got a COVID corridor right next to our ward for the elderly where anyone who tests positive within the trust gets sent to this ward, right? And that's been empty for most of the last 10 months. There's a few in over winter. None of them had any symptoms. They were walking around. They were fine. They just tested positive. So from my own observations, that's when it started to not make sense, because I was there in the NHS on an elderly ward, supposedly the most at-risk demographic, and not one single patient's got sick since last April. And that's no word of a lie. And I've tried to do a freedom of information request to my trust to find out the real statistics, because the WHO now say that a case of COVID cannot be determined by just a positive test. There also has to be a clinical presentation of symptoms. So I'm trying to find out the percentage of positive tests that have actually had symptoms, and I have not had a response yet.
Yeah, and also there's a list of what is it, notifiable
Yeah,
infections. What's the actual term? Is it NOI?
something like that.
Notification of infection, something like that. So a doctor has to actually, assess somebody and decide have they got a notifiable infection, of which they then have to report it. That's how the figures are normally done. But what they've actually done is taken it away from the doctors and the clinicians, and they've installed these PCR tests. So you're bypassing the system to use a test that isn't actually accurate. It doesn't pick up the virus or a virus. It picks up particles from, like, I don't know what, a 0.0 percentage of a particle of a virus that could have been from months ago. It's
The
things like that.
tests,
They don't make sense.
the tests can't detect a disease. COVID-19 is the name given to the disease. It can't detect that. It can't tell you if you're infectious. So it can't tell you if you're going to pass it on. It can't tell you if the presence of that RNA that is supposedly from SARS-CoV-2, but presumably can be from other similar coronaviruses as well. It can't tell you if that presence of that genetic material has anything to do with your health condition. So yeah, it's a complete canard, the numbers that we're getting. And even the WHO now say that. And that new advice came out on Inauguration Day. So make of that what you will. But they changed their advice and said you need to be a clinical presentation as well as a positive test. Where there is just a positive test and no symptoms, the WHO said you have to do another test with a different diagnostic tool to corroborate the result. They also said, drew attention to the PCR cycle threshold, which is an issue we've been talking about since early last year, or mid last year at least, where this cycle threshold is a parameter on the test. It's like amplification, essentially. The more you amplify a result, the more likely you are to detect something. And, we all know Carrie Mullis, people have been paying attention, know that the inventor of the test says that you run the test enough times, you can find anything in your system because, you know, everyone has these. You have thousands of viruses and bacteria in your system, the pathogens, and it's what makes the difference is whether your particular body is able to deal with the presence of that virus in your system, because we know there's an 80% correlation between people that are said to have died from COVID and had vitamin D deficiency. So again, it comes back to these simple things you can do to help your body fight off these types of infections, which we weren't told about to begin with. But here's my cat. Hang on. You can't see him. Oh, he's gone. He's in the shadows.
I tell you what, I got a question to ask you, but I saw something recently, a video from a virologist, and he did it in collaboration with other scientists. And this is potentially explosive. I don't know if you've caught it. It's about the jabs essentially, and your own immune system, your defenses have a broad spectrum as to what they can actually fight off, what kind of infections. Whereas the jab that you're getting is for one particular, and that means possibly instead of having, so that will be injected, and that is going to be your dominant defense. It's going to effectively stop your own broad spectrum of defense from attacking all different viruses. So you're being injected with something that will attack one virus and one particular virus, and therefore if you get a variant, it will ignore it and it will bypass because it's only there to stop this one particular virus or strain of it. And also your own immune system will not attack it either because it will be told not to. This is the issue that we're trying to get through, and that's a very scary thing when they're talking about variations coming in, especially during the next flu season.
And is that related to ADE? That sounds like it might be related to antibody-dependent enhancement. This is the issue that a lot of scientists are concerned about because it has precedent. The last time they tried to make a vaccine for coronaviruses in the challenge trials, a lot of the animals died, and the ones that were vaccinated were more likely to have serious symptoms than those that weren't vaccinated because of this thing called ADE, and that's the previous attempts at coronavirus vaccinations were halted because of the failure in the challenge trials, which apparently these vaccines didn't have before they were launched. The first human challenge trials were in February. As from what I've read, and someone can prove me wrong otherwise, I don't think there was any animal challenge trials before it came to market. So that seems unprecedented to skip that very important stage.
Said it had all the same tests, all the same trials before it's come out into the real world trials, which it is in real world trials. It had the same tests, and it didn't. It didn't have the animal trials because, like you said, previous times that they've tried this, and it's not just one time, not documented once. This is multiple times they've tried this. It killed all the test subjects, and when they introduced it to the actual virus.
Yeah, so this is potentially one of it. I'm going to go somewhere else so I can be quiet.
People will say, you're anti because we'll say this, and I'm not, because I've been vaccinated for other things when I was a child. My family has as well. We're not anti these sort of things, but just to bring up a concern is enough to call you anti everything.
I've been vaccinated for a lot of different things because of my job and everything up until the pandemic, and I'm not taking that.
No, we'll wait to see what happens to everybody else. I'll wait another year. If I have to sort of pull myself away again from society just to protect myself from this, then I will over winter. We've already done it once. What's the worst that's going to happen now? We'll wait to see what happens when they're introduced to an actual virus during a season.
This is the thing, and actually, we might have already had some inclination of this problem this past winter, because of course the first people to get the vaccines in December were people in care homes. So this is people that are having their decision made for them by other people that have got on a section, or they've got a deprivation of liberty order, or other people are making their decisions for them, right? So these people are the first ones to get the vaccines, and we saw dozens of stories of COVID outbreaks in care homes following vaccination being rolled out. So we might have already seen evidence of this happening in those pockets where in care homes you've had the most at-risk people given the vaccine first, and then a few weeks later having an outbreak of positive cases, not just positive cases, but serious sickness and death with COVID-19 attributed to it. So that could have already happened. So, I mean, it's fucking scary. I want to be wrong about all this. I really fucking want to be wrong. I want next winter to just be average like last winter was, funnily enough, for RTI deaths. But I want it to be average again. But it's scary to think there's potentially going to be carnage next winter because of the overreaction that's going to happen in people that have had the vaccine, either to that
But it's
virus
not
or
even
other
going to be
viruses.
just that. This is the scary thing. This is the thing I'm worried about. And like you said, you just touched on something perfect. I want to be wrong. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. The people who are like us that are saying the things that we are desperate to be wrong. We want to come out next year and everyone goes, you were worried about over nothing. Brilliant. We can all get back to doing what we're doing. But the worry is you've got that could possibly happen because nearly all my family's been done. Nearly all her family's been done. We know loads of people that have been done. It's bonkers.
My mum and dad got it. My mum got it, and then got carry on.
But on top of that, look at all the cancer treatment that's been missed. You're waiting for a nuclear explosion to happen during the next viral season. You've got people that will have, say, a cancer and something quite prevalent in them that hasn't been treated, or they might start getting treatment, and they're going to be exposed to viruses coming around during the next flu season. Or there's also the worries of the people that have had the jab shedding the virus as well. And this could be potentially a huge disaster. And all they're going to do is blame it on COVID.
Yeah. But the thing is, how can they blame it? They're backing themselves into a corner, though, because how can they legitimately blame it on COVID when their vaccination program has been so fucking successful? And surely you've fixed the problem, haven't you? You've done a year and a half, 2 years of lockdowns and all the vaccinations. So didn't any of that do anything? Like the house of cards is so ready to crumble, and this is why it's important that there's these court cases going through now, challenging the minutiae of exactly how they've manipulated this situation, and that's going to be important precedent. But I can't see how they can get away with blaming COVID again when they've done all these things that are supposedly fixing the situation. Like, how are they going to get out of that?
Lockdown worked, vaccines worked. So what's the problem?
Yeah.
What are we worried about? If it's worked, it's worked. Why are they still putting this propaganda out? Which, like I said earlier, it's over. We already know. We've been told the pandemic's over, so we should be able to go out. He said he's on data, not dates. We're still waiting for a particular date to come along for us to react. That's the opposite. This is the thing I try and tell people. When people say something and yet their actions are the opposite, those people are liars, and you have to question them. When somebody actually says something and follows through with it, they're being truthful. And I haven't seen much of it from these people.
Even by the government's own definition, the pandemic was over in March last year when they downgraded it from a highly fucking summer infectious disease, high consequence. They downgraded it from high consequence infectious disease in fucking March. So
what do you make of that? Because that's one thing that loads of us have brought up over and over again, that they did that last March, and then people will just sort of poo-poo it away, sort of thing, like, no, it doesn't mean anything. But it's literally there in literature on their own website, and they're telling you this. So what do you make of that? Why is that there, and why is that not being questioned?
Well, I've read arguments that suggest that the reason they did that is because of the logistics of what they were about to do next. It made it easier for them to do the things that they were going to do. Because if they had kept it as a high consequence infectious disease I've read, I can't remember specifics, but some other protocol they should have had to follow, and they would have had to be more strictly curated over what their response would be because it was categorized as such. If you get me, I can't remember the specifics of it, but that's what I've read about potentially one of their motivations for doing that. But so that it logistically made it easier for them to play about with laws and stuff and shit in their reaction because they wouldn't have been tied to whatever expectations would have been there had it still been classified as such.
Well,
But
with the way
I
things
don't
are,
know.
we already know that Matt Hancock is the one in charge because everything is going through him now.
Well, I would say in charge is a strong term to use. I think he's one of the most willing puppets. I mean,
I
really, when
think
you see these
policy-wise,
people,
not necessarily behind the scenes, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
policy-wise,
yeah,
where
yeah. Oh,
everything
yeah,
comes.
absolutely. But
When you think about it, everything now comes through his health department. So it's not
well,
necessarily Boris. Oh, everyone says Boris Prime Minister, whatever. Whatever. He's technically not right now. Everything has to go through Matt Hancock because it's all fallen on his shoulders for some reason.
but it's the Parliament now, the government now is such an obvious wretched hive of scum and villainy that I don't know why every single person in this country isn't on board with questioning what's going on because we already fucking didn't trust Boris Johnson. We already knew they were up to no good. We already knew like they were lied about 1,000 other things beforehand. So why is it not now a nationwide 100% population like questioning of things going on? Like it's mental. It's like.
Any time in history before this, you say something, do you trust politicians? No. Oh, why are you trusting them? They're all clearly making money out of it. So I don't understand why we're trusting. I've got a really good question for you here, right? I've got a question for you here. So this guy called Paul Hayworth, whatever. Um, Nothing changes the fact you have both spread lies and misinformation through ignorance. So we're still getting comments like this now. What do you
And that's
make of that?
well, a throwaway charge like that puts you in a position where, in order to disprove that, that's a very long conversation because they didn't give anything specific. Tell me, do a specific thing. Like, tell me some piece of misinformation that I or Wobble has put out there. Like, let's be specific. I will talk about these things. I will gladly go into the detail of what you think I've said that's misinformation. Let's discuss it. But
Yeah.
they don't tend to get specific. It's
No,
a
you get
vague
comments like you're a
accusation.
liar, you're an idiot, you're this, you're
Yeah,
that, and it's like,
yeah.
yeah, you're attacking me. Attack the information I've just given. Like, what's your
Yeah, play
problem
the
with it?
ball.
And they can't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, play the ball. And oh, when did you get your doctorate? Oh, you're not a scientist. I listen to scientists. I listen to qualified, some of the most qualified people in the world. Obviously, one of the most obvious ones, Mike Eden. 17 years he was vice
Yeah,
president for respiratory diseases at Pfizer. So he's not on the fucking conspiracy theorist side. He was previously part of big tech, big pharma, right?
he's one of the
So
people
this
that
is a
essentially
guy,
helped them build the system of
yeah.
vaccines and whatnot.
So this is a guy who's been on the inside, knows how it all works, and doesn't have any. You would expect him to have a loyalty to them, and yet he's seen the illogical moves that have been made. He's seen the inconsistencies with the research. He's seen the problems with the PCR test protocol, and he's addressed it specifically with knowledge. And this guy is not invited on the fucking mainstream media, and he's not alone, but he's just one of the obvious examples that people have heard of. He did get taken down off Twitter, though. He was doing really well on Twitter and a big following on there. Really insightful, important, specific threads detailing his experience relative to each point that came up. He was taken down off Twitter. He seemed to get hacked, and I think somebody posted some racist tweets, and then he had his account pulled because of these hacked tweets. But
Right. See,
these
Mike
people
Eden
are.
was actually my introduction into the whole censorship of this thing because I'd heard about people being silenced and that. And then I listened to him give a talk. Was it over a Zoom meeting or something? He gave a talk to a group of people. Wasn't it a council meeting? Something like that. He gave his opinion to a council meeting, right? He introduced himself, who he was, his credentials, and then he gave his opinion, which he admittedly said it's anti-narrative or whatever, against the narrative. But he said why, he said how, all the rest of it. I recorded that so that it wasn't actually, you know, the codings you get from videos. If you download the video and then you upload it, it will still have the coding in there. And if it's been deleted somewhere before, it will get deleted again immediately.
Oh,
I
yeah,
independently recorded it like a screen recording, and then I posted it up on YouTube, and it was taken down in 2 minutes. And I don't have a huge following on YouTube. It was taken down in 2 minutes. That guy alone is just completely cancelled. You cannot listen to that opinion. And that shouldn't be. This is a guy who is actually very important himself, and yet he's just cancelled like that. And that I know what people they're saying, that misinformation and things need to be sort of sifted through. But why is it we've managed to get to this stage in society in our history now through people being able to, even people that have made up lies, like government officials. We've managed to get here by debating it and seeing through the bullshit and then moving forward. Why is it right now we're being told no, there is no sort of debates anymore. There is no conversation about these things. You can't hear both sides. You just have to understand that's misinformation because we said it is. I don't understand.
The control of information is obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry. It has been for many years. Mass surveillance obviously has been a problem for at least 15, well, decades, but it ramped up in 2008 with the invention of thin thread, which was a thing that the NSA created, which essentially was a dragnet, collect all information and then we'll look for what we need later. This is the change that happened in 2008 that then rolled on, and GCHQ in the UK got on board with that kind of way of dragnet surveillance information collection, right? So once that they have that system in place, they then went on and justified it because they were doing it illegally for several years, and then they passed laws to justify what they'd already been doing. And this is something that they do quite often. So this is something to look out for. If they're doing something illegally or on the sly, or people are trying to bring attention to it, they're denying at first, eventually they will justify that by making laws to protect what they've already been doing. So with mass surveillance, they've got this dragnet collection of information. And now what you've got is a total control of information. Fact checkers on Facebook is an insane concept. It's like someone coming into your house when you're having a conversation with your friends, putting a bag over your head and saying, no, he's lying. This is a conversation between me and my mate. Who the fuck are
We're not
you
far
coming in my
off
house?
of that, I don't think, to be fair.
And then so I made this point on Facebook, and someone says, actually, Facebook's a private company, so it's like you're in someone's house, and the party owner came over and corrected you when you talk. I said, that's still creepy. That's still creepy. If I go to someone's party and the guy who lives there comes over whilst I'm talking to somebody and says, no, that's bullshit. That's still creepy, and you just still don't need anyway. But anyway, so you've got that control information, right? And you've got companies set up specifically to manage that type of information, social media output. Of course, 77th Brigade, JTRIG, Integrity Initiative. There's many other outfits as well. And then you've also got companies like Rupert Murdoch's Storyful. If anybody's heard of Storyful, this is they describe themselves as a social media intelligence firm owned by Rupert Murdoch. It wasn't started by him, but he bought it out. And they go around buying, or I don't know if they buy, but claiming the rights to media, pieces of media, footage, anything they want to get their hands on. And then they put copyright claims in. So, for example, you might have all seen the footage of the guy in the cold environment putting masks on and blowing out, and it shows that the breath still goes everywhere and it billows all around his head. You might have seen that video. If you haven't, it's fucking enlightening. I don't think the guy's intention was to show that all masks are pointless, but that is what it shows, because he's putting one mask on, then two masks on, different combinations of masks, and it's all billowing around around his head because he's in a cold environment, so you can see it where otherwise you normally wouldn't have. Anyway, that video, if you try and post it on Facebook, it will get taken down, or at least a copyright claim will be put on it by Storyful, owned by Rupert Murdoch. Even though this video was uploaded by some random TikTok user called something Roy Vermont or something, but like, Murdoch didn't make that video. Why has he got a claim to that video? Why does he need to control a video that shows that masks are pointless? Like, so there is such a depth of control of what's going on now, information, and what you're allowed to show. It's no wonder that there is a perception that we are the minority, when actually there's probably a hell of a lot more people questioning things, but you're bombarded with only one side of it. So that's dulls down. People aren't, passionate so much about these kind of things. It's in the background of their life because it's affecting everybody, but they're not politically active. Those kind of people, they're getting bombarded with only one side of it. So that's
Mm.
likely to change their opinion or at least stop them questioning things. You've got the fucking soap opera infomercials for the vaccines. I got my second vaccination. And like taking the
I went
piss
on
out of people.
Facebook the other day and I was confronted by at the top of my homepage. It had my profile picture and with the border around it saying I've had my vaccine. Do you want to use this? And no. Why are you asking me? Why do you want me to promote that for you? What's that all about?
Yeah, it's
Why
weird.
do they need to promote it so heavily when it's something? That's the other thing as well, right? They're promoting this thing so heavily and sort of coercing you and forcing you to do it for all these different things. If it was something that was so prevalent that we needed and so obvious that we needed, wouldn't we be out there having it? Because now they've got
Yeah.
to the younger portion of society, the numbers have stopped. We're
But they're
not
so
having it done
desperate
anymore.
now. They're so desperate now, they're going around in a bus. Did you see my recent videos about the
I saw
vaccine
your
bus?
video, yeah. That was funny, that.
I mean, two of those have currently been flagged. I re-uploaded them on this backup channel, the new channel, and they've two of them been flagged. So let's see what the review process feels about that. It's just a public conversation between me and some police about the situation, and everything that I said in the video was true, and you can go and verify it if you care to. But they've been flagged by people that just can't handle, different opinions. But uh, so that's
Sorry,
yeah.
got a quick question for you here.
What age group is it on?
Oh, so she's asking what age group are they on now for the vaccine?
I thought they were on the 50-year-olds, but like I said, they're just going around in a bus now, desperate for anybody to roll the
It's a
sleeves
bit
up. So
sporadic now as well, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's. I don't think it's past the 40s.
Yeah. Yes, one of her friends in his early
A
20s.
lot.
Oh, a lot of her friends. So some of them in their early 20s are getting letters and
Mm.
invites to go and get their jab done. So it is very sporadic now. They're just clamoring at whatever they can.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, you know what? A lot of people who've had the first jab ain't going to get the fucking second one because they've heard about the blood clot situation. My mum is one of them. Unfortunately, both my parents had at least the first jab, and I tried to talk to them a little bit about it. I hadn't really hit them over the head with it. I don't live in the
It's
same
hard,
area
isn't
as
it, when
them,
it's
so
your own family? Because you don't want to cause a complete split in your family and
well,
everything.
well, I'm not actually shy to upset anybody because I know that I'm trying to say it from a place of love and honesty. So I'm not bothered. It doesn't cause me any anxiety that I might upset anyone because I'm just trying to help. So if they take it wrong, that's on them really. But saying that, I haven't been talking to him a hell of a lot about it, mainly because we're not in the same area of the country, and I don't see him that much. So it's like it's not the same on a text or whatever. You can't convey the same conviction or the same sense of urgency. It's people get used to a certain way of communicating in text, and they it's too easy to disregard things that are said in text conversations. I think because we've got used to it being a bit throwaway and flippant sometimes. I get that. But yeah, so I didn't get a chance to really speak to them too much about it. But they both had the first one. But since the blood clot situation occurred, my mum is saying she's not going to get the second one. So it'd be interesting to see what percentage of people who got the first one don't bother going back because they've started to think, hang on a minute, do I really fucking need this thing? Like I survived a whole year without it. Probably don't need any help continuing to survive, continuing to not
And if the
die.
first one was apparently so good on its own, what's the need for the second one?
That's it. That's brilliant. So we've had two obviously contradictory stories in the media that you don't even need to spin. Like right. So on the one hand, we've got stories saying, "Oh, one dose of the jab is a really good protection," and then on the next page of the fucking daily whatever, we've got a story saying, "Oh, you're going to need a third jab at some point." So like, make your mind up. Like, is one good or is this every year now?
Well, they've already said we have to treat it like an um, endemic virus, which we already knew it would be. If it's This is the thing that some people don't realize. Okay, and I understand how scary it can be because let's say, for example, and this isn't conspiracy. Let's say, for example, it is flu. Okay, and let's say it's a new flu that we haven't had before because we have different strains of flu. That's what they said about the 1918 Spanish flu as well. It was a strain that they'd never come across. it hurt a lot of people. Okay, we'll go with that. Let's say this flu. It's still going to be an endemic virus. After a year or so, once it's gone through the population, it's now endemic. They'll create vaccines for it. They'll create different drugs to help alleviate symptoms and whatnot. And
Well,
you
they've got
carry on.
tablets now.
Oh yeah,
Have you seen?
that's just that doesn't compute either. How so they couldn't do injections before for it over the last decades, but now they have not only injections, but now tablets. Tablets won't cure anything like that.
There's a reason there's never been a
They
vaccine
call
for
them
a
flu
coronavirus.
tablets by any chance.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason there's never been a vaccine for a coronavirus before. It's chiefly because they mutate too quickly. People compare a vaccine passport to needing a certification to say that you've had a yellow fever vaccine when you go to certain countries. But yellow fever is very, very different to a coronavirus. For a start, one shot of yellow fever vaccine does you for life. That's it. The virus doesn't mutate to the point where you're going to need any kind of update to that shot. One shot does you for life. Second of all, it's not passed person to person. You get it off mosquitoes. So there's lots of other differences. People make that correlation to justify vaccine passports, which is a whole bunch of bollocks, obviously. But yeah, there's several reasons why there's never been a vaccine for a coronavirus before. And so
My
now
mum went
they're
to
going to
Peru
focus
and
on.
she had to have jabs to go to Peru, and I was like, why on earth would I want to go somewhere where I have to have a jab to protect me just to go in the country? Clearly, I shouldn't be there.
Yeah. But, so now they're focusing on treatment. So they got these tablets, and now they're saying exercise. Oh, vitamin D is a thing they've just discovered, and like so it's in order to get those numbers down, so that they can claim that they have fixed the problem. They are now publicizing obvious solutions to help you combat these types of infections anyway that we knew about and been trying to talk about for the last year. But they finally officially made those recommendations. The WHO has finally changed its advice on how to measure cases, all in line with the rollout of what is supposed to be the solution to the problem. So, you know, it seems dodgy.
Yeah, because I mean, if people wonder why there are conspiracy or what are considered conspiracy theorists, because that term is actually it's been twisted a lot because a conspiracy is where people actually conspire to break the law or commit a criminal act. A conspiracy is a real thing. It's not
Yeah,
like conspiracy is something floating around in the air or in the minds of these nutters. No,
yeah.
no. Conspiracy to commit is a real thing. You go look through history and the trials. These are real. So where you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you like, because I'm coming up with these questions and arguments for something they might be conspiring to do. So the reason why people will then go, well, I feel like there's something nefarious going on with these injections and why they want us to have them. The reason being is they're telling us how great they are, how much they work, and then they tell us, hold up, and they're the way to get out of lockdown. And then once you've got to the point where so many people have had it, where it goes past their own projections, and they said they're better than they even thought they would be, we've come past the point now where the pandemic is over. Then they go, oh, it's not because of the injections; it was because of lockdown. So you're like, so what was the point of the injection, and why did you make me have it? It's that,
They make
and
it
then it's
they
like,
make it
well,
too easy.
what's behind the injection then? That so where people think like, oh, you're just conspiracy theorists. This is where we get to this, and it's not that we've now made an assumption that the injection is bad or it will do this, it will do that. That's not what we're doing and saying. We're not coming to a sudden conclusion. We're now asking the question, and now we're going to delve into it. That's not conspiracy
Right.
theorist.
I
That's working
I
out if
prefer
there's a conspiracy at play.
I prefer the term conspiracy detector. I am someone who tries who has an interest in detecting whether conspiracies are occurring. You know, the collusion of representative people, elected representatives, colluding with private interest to bypass democracy and change how we are governed by people that we are supposed to be represented by, not lorded over. So that's quite an important thing. It's quite a useful and healthy thing to be concerned with, is whether or not there are people working behind the scenes against our interests, taxpayers' interests, we're the ones that put them there in the first place. If they are making secret deals, like we've just heard the other day with Boris Johnson texting saying, "Oh, I'll fix your tax problem, Mr. Dyson. Everything's fine. Don't worry about that." So, like, what is wrong? Everybody should be concerned with discovering that kind of thing happening. So I think that the conspiracy theorist narrative is pushed by probably a lot of these, government-funded
Oh, it absolutely
troll
is.
farms.
But also, if you arrive at the conclusion that we are conspiracy theorists because we question these sort of things, or think there may be something nefarious at play because of what we're seeing, by that by that very line, you should be calling these bodies that have to investigate. What did they investigate? Whether the UK is endemically racist. Shouldn't you be calling that body a conspiracy theorist group? Because they have to actually look at to see if there was a conspiracy at play uh, over racism in the UK. What about the ones that, like you said, to do with these text messages? They're supposed to be putting a body together to investigate that. Are they not conspiracy theorists? You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't
Someone,
use it for one thing or the other.
someone's saying here, someone in the chat saying, conspiracy theories was a made-up term by the CIA to make truth speakers seem mad. I've heard this before. That this was something
Yeah,
the CIA came up with originally, and was it around JFK or something? Or it was before that. Or, yeah, and it's just the
it,
latest term to
it's
disregard.
it's very much like, so where they, with JFK, it was so very obvious it wasn't what they were saying. Again, I'm not throwing a conclusion out there. I'm just saying it's not what they were saying. So it's being investigated. But it's very much the same as oh, I had something in mind there, but it's gone. It'll come back to me. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's some really. It's nice to have found some people that are critical thinkers on TikTok, because I wasn't interested in their website. So all my friends told me about it for obviously the more entertaining side of it, and I had a little scroll on that. But then I found like philosophers and people talking
Yeah,
about politics. I thought, oh shit, because I used to be involved in a scene on YouTube talking about politics and stuff, and that scene kind of died the death. It all imploded. It started off, there was a lot of kind of atheists talking with religious people, and then it morphed into kind of political chat, and it was quite lively for a few years, but it kind of died off. But
mm,
it's nice to find like-minded people on TikTok. It's a shame that it's so easy to get fucking taken down by these crazy new rules, the unprecedented, specifying an actual topic that people is kind of taboo to talk about is unprecedented. Like even if you're wrong, imagine this: is it not okay to be wrong on the internet? Can you not do that? Like,
that's a crime
even if
these
I'm
days.
wrong,
I think.
pardon?
That's a crime these days.
Yeah, well, it's just weird, isn't it? It's like, what is so, and obviously it's the specific things that they censor. Like they don't censor flat earthers. That's not a threat to anybody. People talking about flat earth theory, they're not
Yeah, because
censored.
they want that out there. They want people to look crazy because then what they do is, say we talk about the jabs and there might be something at play, and we haven't said what we think is at play. We say there might be something that needs looking at. Oh, these bunch of flat earthers. That's why they want them out there because they look crazy. But the thing I
Yeah,
always say,
that's
right, and I'm not a flat earther, okay? And people can make this comparison all they like. I'm not. But I do say, well, I don't necessarily know the world is round because I haven't seen it. Do you know what I mean? I haven't been
well,
to
yeah,
space.
yeah.
I don't.
I,
I only go off what I've been told. They showed me a globe and they say the world's round. I haven't worked out the geometry around it. I haven't worked all that stuff out. I can't
it's
say to
good.
you it's round.
It's good to be an I don't knowist.
Yeah, that's the middle. That's the
Yeah,
point. That's the exact point of what we're missing today. We need more people sat in the middle, ready to hear both sides, and say, "Well,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense," and then say, "Well, that makes sense. Well, actually, that cancels out that. So, we're gonna have to figure out
I
something
mean,
else
it
out."
depends. It is getting late, right? And I have to go to bed soon because I've got London tomorrow. But it's a
So you've
big,
got a big day
deep
tomorrow.
it's a big rabbit hole to go down, that actually people are conditioned from a young age to think like that. So they are not taught how to, in this country at least, they are not taught how to think. They are taught what to think. So you get subjects, right? So here's your subject. Here is maths. Here is science. Here is geography. These are the things that are important about this topic. So it's like you get taught information about certain things, and it's prescribed and it's controlled, and that is it. It's not about school is for most people in this country is not about how to think. It's about what to think. So that is a way that people are conditioned early on, and then when they get older, they don't realise they're not actually doing a think. They're doing a regurgitate, or they've found a position that they've attached themselves to, and then they justify that position with whatever they can do. That's cognitive dissonance. That's a big problem that's been going on this year, of course, because who was it, Mark Twain, that said it is easier to fool somebody than it is to show them that they've been fooled.
Yeah.
So like once somebody has
Because it's
been
like
taken
attacking
by,
them personally. Once they've developed this ideology, they feel attached to it, and they feel like you're attacking themselves rather than the information, trying to present something new to them, just to help them. If I could leave people with one last message, it would be to absolutely, if you disagree with people like me and Uj here, or even disagree with people from the other side, you should still listen to them. I listen to many podcasts, I listen to interviews, virologists, scientists, politicians. I listen to people who I completely disagree with regularly, and I know I'm probably going to disagree with them, but I still listen to their stuff because you have to hear the other side. If you only hear the stuff you agree with, if you only hear the stuff you like, you create an echo chamber and you carry on down the wrong path. You have to hear both sides and decide what's right from both pieces of information. It's really important. You'll be a very well-rounded person. You won't always be the perfect person. None of us are. And I encourage people to question us. I encourage people to, if they think we're wrong, prove we're wrong. Absolutely go for it. Because if you do prove us wrong, I'm going to go, that's amazing. You've absolutely helped me out. And what you've just proved, I can then tell other people as well. It doesn't go just one way. I will hear your information and put that out. You don't have to hear my information and put it out.
That's it. Yeah.
It's been great. This is actually the first time we've spoken properly face to face other than messages. So it's really nice to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, you too, man.
More of it.
Yeah, we will. I'm sure we will. If the channel stays up, you see what happens. But fucking hell, yeah, big day
Hopefully you're
tomorrow.
still going to be able to do your live videos tomorrow. So what I'll do, what time are you going to sort of kick off, like doing live videos?
Probably no earlier than 1 a.m. Probably around 1. Yeah.
Oh wow! Oh, so you're starting really early.
What does 1 a.m. I said 1 p.m. I'm frazzled.
Hey, what are you doing at 1 a.m.?
I'm frazzled. My brain's frazzled. I'm already ready for bed. So yeah, 1 p.m. tomorrow is when it's supposed to kick off. That's what the posters say, and that'll be around Hyde Park somewhere. So yeah, 1 p.m.
So tomorrow around 12 o'clock, I'm going to put out a video just to say that you are going to be doing live videos, because obviously you're not allowed to put out videos at the minute, which is, it's just daft. It really is. Like, people just attacking you just because you're saying your opinion, as well as finding information for people to read. So I'm going to put out a video saying you're going to go live, and they can go directly to you.
Nice. Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was weird, this one, because this latest block of uploading videos came not in conjunction with a new flag. So I don't know what occurred, what ticker went over a certain thing in TikTok headquarters or what, but it's we're fighting against, it's there's a lot against us.
Well, once you finish your busy weekend, which hopefully you don't get arrested for this time, although it would be entertaining, because when I saw you, it was on a random YouTube video. It wasn't one of your content or anyone I know of you. It was on a random video on YouTube. I was watching. I was like, "That's Uj.
Oh
That is Uj."
God.
And I had to go show her, and she was like, "Yes, it is." Because I'm normally really bad with faces, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, "I swear that's him. He's being arrested." I thought it was hilarious, but I felt bad. I was like, I hope he's all right.
Yeah, after that happened, I shaved my beard down to here. I thought I've got to go fucking incognito for a bit. I'm gonna go to Tesco because I'm like one of the only people that don't wear a mask in my local Tesco, right? So it's like I'm gonna go in there after everyone's just watched the news, and then that isn't that guy just get arrested
Yeah.
off. So I should
Not
go
the
in with a
fame you
mask.
wanted, was it?
No, it was a ball ache. It was a rookie mistake, right? Before I went, I was giving my friend advice about how not to get arrested. I said, it's that easy how not to get arrested. Just don't talk to the police. Walk away. Do not engage. If they say walk away, walk away. Go around the block, come back later on, but do not engage, right? I broke the fucking first rule of it because I thought it'd make a good video. So I was filming it. I was like, oh, this should be a good conversation. I'll get this on camera. I'll do a little video. That'd be good for TikTok, this. And then I got arrested.
I mean, like I said, there's plenty of things that I read the details. I'm really big on detail. For some reason, it fascinates me, the details of things. So acts, statutes, laws, things like that. Even with the police, unless you're you've committed a crime, committing a crime, or they suspect you of committing a crime, when they're speaking to you and you're walking by, you do not have to stop. Do not have to stop whatsoever. And I would always advise you not to. Like I said, if you've committed a crime or they suspect you of committing a crime, they will stop you. They won't just talk to you and try and get a conversation out of you, because they would like to entice you to stop. And then that's a bad situation, because anytime they want to communicate with you and they're not suspecting you of something, you've got a problem. So just walk away.
Yeah,
Forget about your
100%. So
content.
that's
Before you go, I did want to ask you as well. Have you ever thought of teaming up with people that do these videos? You know, where they film the police and audits and stuff like that. I've seen some of the stuff like over the last few years, and some of it's quite good, some of it's just a bit bullshit. They're just trying to make money off doing it. But they do know their laws and acts and statutes and how to interact with the police. And I wonder, shouldn't these people now be going over into your sector, like to do with these protests and whatnot? Shouldn't they be looking for something a bit higher, with a bit of a higher calling than just making money off videos, filming police? They should be getting involved in something like this. And have you ever thought of teaming up with those sort of people?
Certainly going to be looking into different avenues to try and be useful, because the whole TikTok thing is really just a distraction, to be honest. Like, I enjoy doing it. It's nice to feel like sometimes you even manage to reach a neutral and change minds and stuff, but it's by and large you've got people that think one way already or think the other way already, and there isn't a hell of a lot of neutrals, it seems, that you're actually changing minds and making a difference. So my next thing is, certainly going to try and find other avenues to make some kind of effort. Like these freedom of information requests, I'm trying to challenge what I can within the NHS. I'm trying to ask questions of high up people in there through official channels, and I'm going to write some articles for a paper called The Light. People might have heard of that. Other things going on, but those people certainly have some useful information. Definitely, all that good information about how to deal with police in those types of situations went completely out of my head when that occurred, because I was all a bit flustered, to be honest. I was like, oh, I don't want to miss the march. This is before it even happened. I was like, oh, I'm going to miss it. So I was a bit fucking flustered. So all that good information, all that good advice on how to deal with those situations and your rights and the law and the precedent and all the rest of it, straight out of my
It's
head.
different when you're in the situation. It's high pressure and it just goes. That's why I wouldn't deal well with. I'm the sort of person that does well with hindsight. So afterwards, like, I should have said this, or I could have done that. In that moment,
Man,
I can't think of anything clever or the right thing to say, and I just go,
Yeah, it happens. It happens, absolutely. It's good speaking to you, man. I'm definitely going to have to go get some sleep up early and then down to London, and then hopefully everybody subscribe. You'll follow me and see the live feed tomorrow and stuff.
Absolutely. Follow Uj. I'll do a video tomorrow, just letting everybody know at midday that you're going to go live about 1 o'clock. Good luck over the weekend. Don't cause too much trouble.
Thanks very much. You helped me get. Thanks very much. You were probably got me the bulk of about 600 more followers today alone. Ridiculous. So it's nice. I had about 3,500 on the main channel, so hopefully people will gravitate and find me again and stuff. But you really helped out. Thanks very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Hopefully we'll do more of this.
Yeah, definitely.
See you later. Have a good one.
In a bit. Cheers, mate. Bye.